Hello and welcome everyone to another Contour community meeting. Today is July 21st, 2020 or July 22nd, depending on your time zone. I can't speak. Today, we're going to go through what we've been working on, and if you have any questions or anything like that you want to add to the meeting today, please do so in the HackMD. And with that, I'm going to share my screen so you all can see, and let's go through things. So I actually have an item today. So the first item of today is that Contour now has a passing CII badge. This is a badge that is kind of shows that an open source project is following best practices when it comes to engineering, processes, and community engagement. So if you click on this link, you will see exactly what we're doing within Contour. So you can get a lot of information on how we do things, how engineering is run, how a bunch of code reviews and stuff like that. It's all detailed in here. Of course, we want to go above passing and look at future silver badges or maybe even gold badges, but that comes later. But right now, we're super happy that we actually have a best practices badge here for Contour. So.
Yeah, thank you, Jonas and Steve, for taking care of this. It's awesome to actually have that in the mix.
So yeah, small little thing that we now have in our repertoire, and I think it's been added to the README now as well. Next up we have Steve Chris.
Yeah, just a quick update following on the. I've been working on adding some additional configurable timeouts to Contour that expose some of the underlying Envoy timeouts over the last couple of weeks. And in going through that, I just noticed that there were a couple of inconsistencies in the syntax that Contour accepts between the config file and the HTTPProxy CRD. So I've just been doing some work to kind of make the syntax across those two consistent. So it's one kind of unified user experience for specifying timeouts. And there's some kind of internal code cleanup to help make that more clear throughout the code base as things are passed around. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Awesome. Any questions, comments for Steve?
I just wanted to say, nice work, Steve. It's really good to see that stuff actually making it in.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, it's once I got in there, I realized that there was a little bit more to it than just adding a couple of toggles, but I feel good about where it's going.
Awesome. Next up, we have Steve Sloka.
Yeah, so I've been working on swapping out our custom XDS control plane with the Envoy's Go control plane package or project. So it's been an interesting struggle to get this sort of up and working. The control plane itself was easy to get running. It was just getting all the tests behind the scenes to pass. So this afternoon I got them all to work now finally. So I had sort of a breakthrough as to what was going wrong with everything. So everything works as is with some updates to how the tests are run is the only thing I had to do. Just refactoring is how we assert that it's doing what it's supposed to do. But this is cool because we can rip out all of our custom code now. Now we're going to run off the open source, the upstream control plane, as well as gives us a good path to move to ADS if we want to do that. So it's good news all around. That's all.
Does that impact being able to go to V3 of the API as well, make it easier?
I don't know if it makes it easier or not, but we use the control plane anyway behind the scenes. But that's on our list here soon as well. I know some of the work that James is doing with auth, as well as the deprecation coming up here at the end of the year. We're going to have to move to V3 here very soon.
So for Go control plane, what they did was they copied the whole thing. So there's a Go control plane v2 package and a Go control plane v3 package for the v3 API. So it doesn't make it easier. I don't know. It probably doesn't make it. Yeah, it's probably neutral or just more code churn.
Yeah, I think we absolutely will be doing the V3 thing soon. I was hopeful that the Go control plane would help more than it seemed to. But the big thing that we've got to do for the V3 migration is to move all of the stuff where we actually use the Envoy protobufs, the Envoy types, the V2 types to the V3 types, and we use it quite extensively throughout Contour. So that's the thing that's a bit bigger. That's the bigger code change.
Nice. Any any other questions, comments? All right. Nick, did you talk about this already? No.
No. Yeah, that's a link to a design document that I merged a little while ago. Oh, I should update the status. But yeah, this one has been accepted. So basically, this is a design doc about how I am currently adding conditions to HTTPProxy and to the other project contour types. The conditions are the community's API standard way to communicate extra status information in an extensible way. So the reason we're doing this is that there's a bunch of tooling that lets you wait. Like the Kube client Go and the Kube control both have a wait for condition loop built into them. So with kubectl, you could just be like kubectl wait condition true, and it will wait until a condition has been true. Right now, so this is to add extensibility for later. Eventually, what I would like to see us do is have some way for a particular HTTP proxy to reflect the fact that Envoy has been correctly programmed with the config from the HTTP proxy. That's a ways away because there's a bunch of other wiring we've got to do. The first condition that we're going to put in is one called valid that mimics the behavior of the current status field, but has additional places for information so that you can, if you've got multiple errors in your HTTP proxy, you'll find them all at once rather than having to do multiple passes. So this has been a bit of a journey just to figure out what everyone else is doing, what the state of the art is, and figure out what we were going to do. But yeah, I'm in the process of pulling in some the actual CID changes now, and then once we've done that, then I'll bring in the code changes to actually populate the fields correctly. Yeah, so it's this is all sort of very low down like design work that's going to open up a problem space for us to be able to use more later. So yeah, have a read of that link. That's design that I've started implementing, and yeah, that's where that's at. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you, Nick. Any questions, comments on this? All right, we got Robin. Robin, you're new to the community call here. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Robin. I'm part of the global design enablement team. So basically, I was actually asked to help on one of the project contour, the authentication and the authorization to the OIDC connectors. So basically, I think today James invited me to join the meeting to actually do some showcase of or maybe a POC of what we have been doing so far.
Awesome.
Yep, so
I've stopped sharing. So if you want to share your screen, go ahead.
Yep, sure. Okay, let me start sharing. Yep, I mean just a brief overview. Basically, this is what we have been doing. Basically, user will call the envoy. Then we actually created a new so-called external authenticator for the envoy, which is what we call as an OIDC. It will talk through the gRPC and in turns the OIDC connector will actually talk to the DEX. You can install this individually. And The reason why we are using a DEX is because we want to we don't want to create a multiple type of the connectors to talk to the different kind of provider. So we're thinking of using a DEX as using as a form of the identity provider, identity federation, to actually federate all those kind of requests to a different kind of provider, and you return it into a single and you return as a JWT and pass back to the Envoy services. I mean, do you guys have any question around here so far? Okay, so if there's no question, I'll just go ahead and show you. So basically, this is my this is a call to my backend services. It will actually pass through the Envoy route. If you hit this, you will see that I have already configured this to actually to do the call back to my DEX in my Kubernetes cluster. So inside here, inside the DEX, I did configure whether you can log in as a static login with the example. If not, you can do a git login with the GitHub. Otherwise, you can do a login with the LDAP connectors. So let us try with the LDAP connectors first. Jane. If I key in the password full here, you can see that you go back to my login services, and you can have a look into the cookies here. You will see that inside the contour, we do have an injection of the cookies and injection of the JWT in the form of the cookies. So if let's say you want to log into the, let's say GitHub, you redirect it to the GitHub login page. So this is basically my own personal GitHub login. I did set up the OIDC for this. Give me a moment. I can't remember the password. Yep. So basically, after the GitHub successfully verify your user, and basically it route back to the DEX, and the DEX will actually reroute your request back to the Envoy services and to my backend services. And it's the same thing. What you can see here, basically, once you got the token ready, it will be stored as a part of the cookies in the client request. So, any question on here?
It looks really good. One question I had is, does the OIDC proxy that you have here in the original diagram, is that constrained to work with DEX, or could it work with other OIDC providers directly?
It can work with the other OIDC provider directly. There's no issue on that because it's still back to those OIDC protocol, right? But again, currently the one that you are seeing here is basically it's a 3-leg authentication. That's what is I'm building against. I'm building towards. One of the limitations that I haven't do is basically on the 2-leg authentication. Basically, when you use if you look into most of the scenario, sometimes system to system call, you may not want to actually show those login screen at all. You just want to pass in the credential through the cookies header, so it'll be authenticated backend.
Thanks, Robin.
All right. Okay, then I'll stop sharing then.
That's really neat, Robin. Thanks.
Welcome.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for the demo. Any questions, comments for Robin?
Thank you for getting up early, Robin. We appreciate you coming down.
Very much so. I know how that feels.
Yeah, it's a good job. But Robin, do you have any documentation for the steps how to set up this?
So currently, I did host this in my own GitHub repo. Currently, I'm building the README file for that. I'll share it in the group chat a bit later, maybe.
Thanks.
I think it would be also really interesting to get people who have real applications to give some feedback on this. I think that you know, I'd like to get feedback on where we need different things to be configured. So do applications need to be able to specify cookie names? Do they need to be able to fish fields out of the tokens? Do they need, to be able to specify scopes? And I think there's a lot of potential parameters in this area, but I'd like to get some real world use case to support which configuration people would find useful in practice.
Awesome. Moving along here, Nick, you want to talk about Contour's landscape? Do you want to share your screen with the blog post and kind of talk through it, or you want me to?
Yeah, so we've got a little while left. Maybe I should do that. Sorry, let me pull up the... Okay. Okay, great. So yeah, this is a blog post that I wrote recently, just to sort of be the sort of official. I'm taking over from Dave as the tech lead. We hadn't done any real communication since that happened. So yeah, this is an official thank you to Dave for getting the project off the ground and for everything that he's done. But yeah, as part of coming on board, what I wanted to do was to write down some thoughts about where Contour's been and where it's going. But yeah, before we get to that, we had this was me celebrating that we got into the NCF at the incubating level. Yeah, which is it's a substantially big deal that we were able to skip the sandbox level and come straight into incubating. So thanks to everybody who has contributed to making the community work well enough that we were able to do that, and thanks to Michael for all of the hard work that he's done to actually make it happen. So yeah, so in terms of the things that I think that Contour has been doing well, is that we've done everybody's here. We're all here. We got accepted into incubating. There's a definite piece of software that is regularly released that people seem to find useful. We created a CRD. We had some people use it. We found some, when we went to add some features, we found a problem, so we created a new one. And we fully deprecated and removed the old CRD now. So we've definitely had velocity along the project for the entirety of its lifetime. But yeah, and this is one of the things that I think is really good about Contour. We have done our best to be responsive to the needs of our users and to meet people where they're at. And one of the things that has come out of that is HTTPProxy and the HTTPProxy CRD. And it is built to help people solve some of the problems that you have when you're trying to use the ingress object in a more multi-tenant style environment where it's very easy to accidentally have ingress objects clobber each other and cause problems. Now, so one of the other things though that we've done as part of that is we've tried really hard to making sure that we're not exposing too much of the fact that we're using Envoy, so that so you don't need to know everything about Envoy to be able to use Contour. I think we've done pretty well at that. I think that's one of the things that we'll talk more about in a minute, about the stuff we haven't done as well. But we've also, yeah, I think that in general, we've done a pretty good job of being able to make it so that you can pick up and use Contour pretty easily without needing to know everything about Envoy. And we've done a lot to over the course since I've been working on Contour to to make it easier to operate Contour. Which I know there are people on the call who are definitely operating Contour for reals, so yeah, like this is what we want to do. We want to make it so Contour is a real thing that is really straightforward and doesn't make it hard for you to actually operate it. So let's get on to stuff that I haven't been so happy about when looking back. One of the things was deprecating ingress route and replacing it with HTTPProxy was made a lot of work for people. I think we've done everything we can to make that easier by providing a tool to convert from ingress route to HTTPProxy, but ideally we wouldn't do that again. And I don't think there's any good reason now for us to do that again, to deprecate HTTPProxy. HTTPProxy is built with the standard API guarantees around GA. It's now a GA CRD, and so we won't be removing or deprecating it. We'll carry HTTPProxy for good. The only thing that we will do is add things to it. If we're going to make substantial changes to it, we will start with a V2 alpha and move towards having a V2 of the CRD, but V1 will always be around. So yeah, I really wanted to make that statement to give people confidence that we're not going to pull the rug out from under you again. And yeah, so although we've made some strides in increasing the operability of Contour, historically we've had a lot of organic growth in how Contour works, and so one of the things that I wanted to do is I want to move away from having a million command line flags to having a config file where all of those options live. Over time, I would like to deprecate and remove as many command line flags as possible, so that we end up with basically only the stuff that you really need for local development, and that's it. And everything else is configured by the config file. The reason for that is that is a purely practical operability one. If we deprecate and remove a command line flag, then people's deployments will break when you upgrade your version. If you have the command line flag there and Contour doesn't support it anymore, then your deployments will go down and not come up when you change the image version. It's as simple as that. Whereas if we have a config file and we've deprecated a setting in there and then removed it, your config file will be fine. Your program will start up and you'll get warning and logs and stuff, but you may have a partially working solution rather than a zero working solution. So that's sort of the reasoning why I really want to move away from command line flags and emphasize the config file. I think lastly, the thing that I think we haven't done so well is that we've had a pretty strong stance on simplicity. We've had a pretty strong stance that we didn't want to add features without really understanding what they were being used for and if the thing that we were adding was the best way to use that. Now, I think that has been an advantage, but one of the things that affected everybody adversely there was that I think a lot of us, or me, and certainly Dave and I on the team, really didn't twig to the fact that one of the things that people use a proxy like Envoy for and an ingress solution like Contour for is to fix up problems with apps that you can't change. A proxy is a great middleware place for if an app is broken in some way and it can't be changed because it's a legacy thing, or someone's relying on people can't make the change for whatever reason, then the proxy is the place where that stuff gets fixed up. In the past, I think we were like, well, if your app can't do the right thing, then you should fix your app. But that's a bit naive, and it's a bit, it doesn't really make allowances for the real world where sometimes you can't do that. And so one of the things there was the sort of the net effect there is that we've really wanted to make it so that to be more open there to talking to people about what are you needing, what are you trying to get out of adding this feature, and to make people feel like we're not saying no, but we're saying like yes, but we want to make sure that we build this for everybody who uses Contour, not just for the person who's asking for it. I framed this in the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think the ugliest part about the history of Contour is that although we've made a great product, and a great software project, a bunch of people have felt the need that they needed to fork it and carry a fork of Contour to be able to use it. That to me says that the people have significant use cases that we have just not met, and carrying a fork is a significant engineering effort, and if more than a few people are doing that, then that means that we have missed something. And that's the thing that I have realized there is part of that is about the fact that the proxy can be used as a fix-up point, but it also means that we need to be more accepting of changes that people want to make and have a better framework for people being able to make changes without us needing to ask a million questions about why they're doing it and how the change should be added. And so that's one of the reasons, another reason for why I really want to push towards a config file, because that makes it easier to add tweakable knobs and stuff like that without us having to have a million command line options. So, before, like, one of the things that I want to do with doing all of this is to make it so that people don't want to carry forks anymore, for one thing, but also to make it so that it's easier to add features to Contour without having to back and forth with us a lot. So some of the ways we can do that is I need to update it, but to have a philosophy document that explains what Contour is about and how we do things, and to have more standard ways to add extra configurability for people who want to add it. But the converse of that is we don't want to add features into Contour that make it harder to use. One of the things that I think is great about Contour is that the initial, hey, I want to kick the tires on this thing experience is pretty straightforward. Like, you don't need to do a lot of config just to get started. And what I want is to have Contour be in a place where there's, that Contour is useful in all its defaults, and then there is a large swath of extra configurability that you can touch if you need to, but you shouldn't need to touch it unless you need that extra feature or that extra bit of configurability, or you've got some reason to. One of the big themes that when I talk to people who've been doing forks is this issue of configurability and making it so that you can tweak more things. That's the timeouts that Chris is working on is the sort of the first instantiation of this. Having better configurability about timeouts, thinking carefully about when people set timeouts. If sometimes because if the cluster admin may want to limit the timeout that you can apply. One of the people who made a fork said that one of the problems that they had was that we added in a request timeout and allowed you to set an infinite request timeout. And then that immediately messed up their centralized proxy, because all of a sudden all these application developers were like, well, if I can have an infinite request timeout, I'm going to do that. And so then their connection pools for their proxies filled up and their proxies fell over because there were too many connections, because the requests were never timing out. And so some people need to be able to put limits on the timeouts if they're running Contour as a centralized proxy. And so that's one of the things that makes this whole thing a little bit more complicated, is that we've got two personas. We've got the application developers who want to be able to create HTTP proxies and have those things exposed in a reasonably straightforward fashion. But we've also got people who are running a centralized proxy and need to be able to put limits around what people can do. And so part of what we're trying to do here is to make it so that we've got patterns for adding these features so that we know how to do it, and we're not sort of needing to spend ages going backwards and forwards on design documents every time someone wants to add a feature. And the other thing we want to do is we do want to expose more Envoy specific configuration. The auth stuff that James is working on is a great example of that. There's this really amazing feature, being able to delegate your external auth, that lots of other proxies support, that Envoy has native support for, that we don't support because we don't have a way to configure it. And so, again, this is a case where we want to make sure that we're exposing this feature in a way that makes it so that it's very usable for somebody who only knows Contour and doesn't know everything about Envoy. And we have ways for you to use the feature in simple ways, like, hey, I just want to have a basic auth username and password on my on the services behind my thing. That should be easy. But we need to have the on-ramp to be able to bring that up into things like Robin demonstrated today, and being able to use OIDC and DEX to be able to to plug into whatever auth you've got available.
Hey, Nick, we're out of time as well.
Yeah, we're running out of time. The other two big things here are being able to configure Envoy with third-party services, of which auth is one, but we've also got requests for logging and rate limiting and some other ones. So we definitely really want to get all that stuff in as soon as we can, and we want to make sure that we're heavily involved, which we are, with the service APIs project for Kubernetes and the future of Ingress, so that we can be driving that, and then we want to be one of the first people to implement it, if not the first. So sorry to have talked for a long time. if anybody wants to ask questions, I can stay around for a bit afterwards. But yeah, I just wanted to quickly run through that so that for those of you who hadn't read it, if you want to read the exact words I've written, please do. Please feel free to hit me up on Twitter or the community Slack. I'm Young Nick there. If you have any comments.
And I know that some of you are wondering when our next release is coming, 1.7. That's in a few days. So I don't know if we can provide a little bit more clarity maybe early next week, but we're working on that, and we should be able. I know Michael, you asked for that in the past, so we'll give you a little bit more clarity when we're a few days away.
Thank you so much for running through that, Nick. Really appreciate it. It's an important piece here, and yeah. As Nick said, please reach out on Slack if you have any questions. With that, I'm gonna end the meeting now. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of the week, and we'll see you soon. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, bye.
Bye.